Remember back when I was Batman's partner? Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. And if you're new here, thank you for joining us. If you're like me and grew up on Batman and Superman and DC and all the other wonderful TV shows and cartoons from the 80s and 90s, then this is the place for you. We're going back and looking at each and every episode of some of these great shows and talking about them from the perspective of an adult now, 25 plus years later. So if this sounds like something you might enjoy, then hop below and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of the episodes. Like today's episode, Old Wounds, which originally aired on October 3rd, 1998.
You sound just like Batman.
This is really a great episode. This tells a needed story that's kind of been missing in what happened with Batman and Robin. And it does what Batman the Animated Series has always done really well, and that is tells an emotionally driven story that doesn't treat the audience like kids and connects with them on a higher level. And I love the episodes that do that. And we're going to talk all about that right after our 60-second Joker Bomb synopsis of the episode. My goal is to give you a complete synopsis of the episode in 60 seconds or less, or close thereafter. Here we go. Nightwing shows up and helps out Robin nab some bad guys, and that leads into a flashback of what happened between Robin, Dick Grayson, and Batman. And we see that Bruce misses Dick Grayson's graduation, not funeral, graduation, and that then Barbara and Dick Grayson are out on a date, and he gets a call, and he's got to leave, and he goes out there, and they're trying to take down Joker's newest plan. They follow a henchman into his apartment, and his little kid is there, and Batman's roughing him up, and Dick Grayson doesn't like this. He ends up at Barbara's apartment and is venting to her. He goes, "Oh, you wouldn't understand." He leaves. Barbara goes to Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne shows her the Batcave and reveals himself as Batman and knows that she's Batgirl, takes him off on the case because Joker is at it again. And then Dick Grayson, Robin shows up, saves Barbara, and now he's upset at Batman that he put Barbara Gordon in peril and didn't tell him that she was Batgirl. And so he's upset and he quits and leaves. And then back in present day, at least I got through the flashback. Back in present day, we see that Robin and Nightwing follow a lead of this wallet and takes them to Wayne Enterprise and finds out that that henchman that they nabbed all those years ago is now been given a chance by Bruce Wayne to be his security guard. And he realized that Bruce Wayne's not all that bad. And even though he doesn't say it, he, I think, forgives Batman. And then we see the bat symbol and they fly off to go help him out. Nice story. I'm like this close to getting it perfect.
Coulda, woulda, didn't.
Something that's interesting that I noticed in the beginning of this episode is in the new Batman Adventures, we see Robin, Tim Drake, off by himself a lot more. And I don't know if that's just a necessity of the style of show that they're trying to structure, because obviously this wouldn't exist if Robin was with Batman, because Nightwing wouldn't have showed up or wouldn't have been able to open up to Tim Drake in that way. But it's interesting to me that in the old episodes where we had Dick Grayson was kind of thrown into the episodes or forced into the episodes. So I don't think he played as much of a role in that as Tim Drake Robin. But also Dick Grayson in the world of Batman was older at this time. He was like a college student, so he could totally be off by himself. And now we have Tim Drake, which is actually a younger Robin. I don't know why I'm still talking so fast. Who is a younger Robin, and we see him off by himself catching bad guys alone.
And another loser bites the dust.
Again, I don't think it was any deliberate or decision or they were trying to do that. I think it just the way that these new adventures work, where they kind of follow other storylines and it's not as much about Batman or just following Batman I should say, here's the perfect way to put it. Glad I just thought of this. It is not so much about Batman's point of view. these stories, many of these stories exist from another character's point of view. So it's not like Batman's not in it, but it's another character's point of view. Case in point, this episode, where we only see Batman in the flashbacks. And truly, we only get to see Batman as interpreted by Dick Grayson. He's telling this story. So even in that, and I always think about that in these flashbacks and these shows, is that this isn't necessarily exactly how it happened. This is how Dick Grayson remembers it, or how he's telling the story to Tim Drake.
You guys used to be the greatest. Batman and Robin, the dynamic duo.
This was a story that needed to be told. I mean, when we kind of jumped ahead in the timeline with the new adventures and we established that Dick Grayson has now moved on and there's a new Robin, Tim Drake, and he's younger, and Batgirl's playing a more prominent role, we kind of alluded to that there was some sort of falling out with Dick Grayson. And so this story, I'm glad that they told this story and took their time to tell it, because I think it carried a little bit more weight. We've seen Dick Grayson and kind of seen the effects of his relationship, like with You Scratch My Back, where we see that there's some tension there, but we don't really get to understand why. So because we've had to wait a little bit longer, this episode really has a greater payoff to it.
It was building for a long time.
One thing I would have liked to see, though, and this is just a stylistic thing, is I think it would have been really neat and great service to the fans if in the flashbacks that was done in the original animation style. We even see Batman already with the new logo on his chest. I think it would have been neat just to see the old, just give us a little throwback. Let us see that original animation style. I get why you had to change it for the Superman, the animated series, and tie those in together, but it's a flashback. And to pay homage to, this is what we used to look like. It is kind of neat seeing Robin in the original costume, and it is kind of cool that he does look older, even older than he did in the original series. So those kind of things are neat, and obviously it's a little further in time, but just the nostalgic factor would have been neat to see that classic original animation style of Batman the Animated Series.
Hey! Do I hit your kids? Oh, actually I do.
And I felt like what was very satisfying about this episode is that we saw little elements of this tension between Dick Grayson and Batman in the original series. Robin's Reckoning is a great example of that. And so this episode is very satisfying that this doesn't come out of nowhere. And when we saw earlier in the series and we saw Nightwing now kind of off on his own and not working with Batman, it made sense. And we're going, oh, I could see how that would happen. So it's very satisfying that this story just fit nicely between those two series. And I guess this was the kickoff of another series in the comics of kind of telling those missing years between the series. But this fits in there very nicely, very satisfying in that.
Batman, not like this. Not in front of his family.
I do just have to mention, I don't have a lot to say about it, but I do have to mention, it's just such a great moment where Alfred is willing to take the heat and confess that he's Batman and take the load on that when Batman is showing Barbara Gordon the Batcave. I just love that moment that Alfred is so loyal and so faithful to his master that he just steps up and...
Yes, I admit it. I am Batman.
The other part that's a little wonky for me in this, and again, it's such a minor element of the story, but when Dick Grayson Robin shows up, this is getting confusing. Dick Grayson Robin, Dick Robin shows up to the scene where Batgirl and Batman are, and she's falling and falling and falling and falling, and he sees her. It's just like there was a lot to this rescue where he rocket packs up by the seat of his bike, which I didn't even know it could do that. Then that falls away. Then Dick Grayson Robin starts falling, but she's going faster than him, so she catches up to him. He grabs her, then batarangs away and saves her. Whereas what I feel like the instinct would be batarang up, shoot up past her and grab her on your way, and then you're to safety. So it's just, again, it was pretty cool to watch, but it was just a little overdone. Maybe Dick Grayson was just trying to show off for Batman. Show off.
You should be sidewalk stroganoff! I changed the menu.
But I do have to say, I mean, then Robin just lays out Batman. And I don't know if it's just because Batman didn't see it coming or wasn't expecting Robin to fire back like that, but Wow, there's some power in that punch.
Robin, wait.
And the other satisfying part about this is that, you know, it's Batman and Robin. And Tim Drake says it very well in the beginning that he's like, you guys are the pair. It's Batman and Robin. And that's coming from the new Robin. I want to see everybody get along. And certainly in the world of superheroes, there's good guys and bad guys. And I get it. They're always flip-flopping that and changing those things around. So it's a neat story and it's great. I love that they put a little strain in their relationship. But I thought it was beautifully wrapped up at the end that we see that Bruce Wayne is not all bad. And again, that's where I go in the point of view perspective of, you know, some of the details of the story may have been skewed by Dick Grayson to prove his point. But then we get to see this, Batman's not a bad guy and kind of does a good thing by offering Cooper, I think his name was, a job as the security guard. And that by doing that, I think that proves to Dick Grayson that, yes, Bruce Wayne is a good guy, and he even verbalizes that. And even though he doesn't necessarily say it and he doesn't come right out, you know what, I forgive Batman. And they don't even show the scene of what happens when Nightwing shows up on the scene with Batman. But it's a very, it's a nice conclusion without wrapping up everything into a nice, pretty bow. That I'm sure there's still some strain, still some tension, but it's good for us to see that Batman's a good guy and good for Dick Grayson as well. Nice ending.
Mr. Wayne is a good man.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, yeah, other than a couple of little clunky parts, which I don't even think are necessarily all bad, and some of it may just be me, it's a really solid episode. And obviously, the story's not so much about the Joker and trying to fit in how he's part of this plot or anything like that. It is just, you know, that's a sub-story of the real story of the relationship between Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne. And like I said, it's a very satisfying story that kind of connects some dots that were missing in there. So for all those reasons, it falls at the number 2 spot of my favorite episodes. It just wasn't quite enough to beat out Over the Edge, even though I get it that one's kind of an Elseworld story or the whole thing is sort of a dream, or is a dream, not sort of, it is a dream. But it's such a great what if sort of story. What would happen if this came to fruition? This episode is a close second. I really kind of flip-flopped on whether or not it could beat this one out. But at the end of the day, this was a necessary story and kind of not predictable, but it fit between two blocks, so we knew where it was going to go. But it does beat out Double Talk because I am a huge fan of Ventriloquist, and I love what they did with this character, and I love how they made it like a true reform episode. Again, I keep saying it, but it's just a very satisfying story. This is seeing Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne, what happened to them, and tying it up together at the end.
I never put on that costume again.
And you still haven't forgiven him?
Why should I? He'll never change.
So where does this episode rank for you? I know it's a big favorite of a lot of fans, and so I want to know, is it your favorite episode, or do you agree with my listing, or are there other elements to it that I didn't talk about that make it fall further down on the list for you? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, then please click the thumbs up like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, then just hit subscribe. I have new episodes coming out every Tuesday and Thursday, and next up, we're talking about Legends of the Dark Knight, so you don't want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode, and I'll see you soon.